Stand by, please.
With me, Antonia Collins from the Bamboo Manager Project.
And me, Jacqui George from Sharjah Performing Arts Academy.
In this podcast, we talk all things stage management. Join us and our guests as we try to answer the question, what is your stage manager really thinking?
This week, we're chatting with Bruce Guthrie, Head of Theatre and Film from the National Centre of Performing Arts in Mumbai, as we discuss respect and hierarchy in theatre.
What do you see as that role of a stage manager being?
Well, I think that the stage manager and their team, when they're working really effectively, you don't even think about them as a director because things just happen. They're all about the facilitation of the production, from rehearsal to the actors to the director. And that then when we're in the theatre as well, it's about the facilitation of everything that goes on stage and backstage, really. The DSM is kind of like as your creative conduit into the production, because for me that's a highly creative role. And I've worked with DSMs, deputy stage managers or show callers, as people might know them, who will sit and will read music and who will feel a cue as opposed to sitting with a stopwatch. I've worked with people who work with stopwatches as well, and you know, at times it's whatever works really. But the best people that I've worked with in that role have been people who really feel it, and because of that, they're very present in rehearsal. So they become somebody who you have a conversation with, but that also who regulate me, because as a director is that I need a bit of regulating, whether that be break times, whether that be this is a thing that needs to happen, that's a thing that needs to happen, because I get rather consumed when I'm in rehearsal and when I'm directing, and I need to feel confident enough that I can do that and know that there are people in the room who will facilitate when I need facilitating, and people who will tell me what I don't necessarily want to hear, but need to hear. I'm always kept well informed. And if it's a stage manager who I trust, I know that I don't need to know everything that's going on. I know that they will tell me things as and when I need to know them. So that for me is that it's the spine of any production, really, is that if you've got great stage management, you don't even know that they're there and everything's dead smooth. If you don't, then you really miss it. So that for me is my view of stage management.
Can I just pick up on the conduit point, Jacqui, a minute? I think Bruce is right about the conduit as far as the deputy stage manager is concerned. But also I think the stage manager is a conduit between the company and the director sometimes, and you know, actually not sometimes, all the time. And that's one of the things that I think, certainly working with Bruce, you know, I can hear what the company have got to say, or a member of the company, and then I can find a way to feed that bit of information back as well. So there's part of a cycle there that's about the way in which certainly young companies are too scared to say something to a director, and actually, you know, an experienced stage manager can help facilitate that as well. And that's back to the trust thing again, isn't it? You know, and I think the thing that Bruce said about the fact that he doesn't need to know it all, he does. He's lying. He's totally lying. He would like to know all of the information all of the time. But actually, that's not humanly possible, because a good stage manager is allowing a director the space to worry about the things they should be worrying about, and hopefully not worrying about the other things that the stage manager should be worrying about.
Well, I'll pick you up on that point there, Antonia, is that I didn't say that I wouldn't like to know. I say this is that I trust that I am informed of things. When you trust the stage manager, then you trust the fact that's happened. That's got nothing to do with what I would prefer. It's a need to know basis. That's very important, is that being able to take the temperature of the cast and mood, and if there's anything in particular that's going on that they wouldn't like to tell you about, and they don't want to bring it into the room because they want to be professional about things, but that sometimes, you know, being an actor is one of the hardest jobs that anybody can do, particularly to do it well. And ultimately, they are the thing that the audience are coming to see, and it's really difficult. And it's riddled with all sorts of anxieties. They are, unlike other art forms, the actor is their canvas, is their sculpture. And so any criticism or thoughts or feelings about their performance or about it is instantly taken as a personal thing. And that takes a lot of processing for an individual to be able to cope with. So it sounds a little bit like what I'm describing as a counsellor's job, but that the best stage managers that I know are kind of like, are utter multitaskers and love a lot of jobs that other people might consider to be boring, but they recognize the importance of doing them well and are almost at the point of being obsessive to make sure that those jobs are done well. Because ultimately, we're all about creating an environment that allows people to do their best work. That's basically is that me as a director, I'm a facilitator of actors and text. That's what I do. Is that I'm about getting the best out of people, and all of that is interlinked with knowing how people are in their personal life, but they're not necessarily knowing the details. I don't need to know the details. I just need to know if there's anything that I need to know, so I can help. That through that help, I'll get a better performance out of people. It's all interconnected. You're a team in every sense of the word.
And I think that point about actors and about respect for actors, I've never wanted to be a performer. And I'm not saying that in your stage management journey you shouldn't do some acting, because I think it's very useful to know how that feels. But my job, as far as I'm concerned, is to help that actor put on the best performance they can put on. That idea that, we are there to create this very supportive environment for actors is so critical, and you have to respect them. There's no two ways about it. I wouldn't want to stand on stage and let people write nasty things about me on Twitter.
One of the key skills that you've got, Antonia, as well, is that I think you've got a very, very good instinct of knowing when to put your arm around someone's shoulder and when to give them a nudge in the back to say, get on with it. If you mollycoddle people, if you just give them what they want all the time, then people come to rely on that, and also a really bad place to be in. Ultimately, is that a lot of people, they crave authority, they crave, control and hierarchy in what are potentially chaotic situations, like a technical rehearsal, like, a performance when someone goes off sick, like, if there's a show stop. Sometimes they just need somebody to take charge. And once again, this is that a great stage manager or company manager will absolutely do that, and they will do it as if it's just second nature. Save the drama for the stage.
I think you're right in terms of enabling enabling actors is really important. The number one complaint I hear from actors about stage managers, if I did a survey, would be they treat me like a child. And I think it's really important that we don't do that we don't mollycoddle them, that we do reserve that kind of, different, more emotional response to things for when things are really difficult. We can't be constantly texting people going, have you got the call for tomorrow? Have you seen that? They're adults. You have to rely on that. And I think that's something that I've learned over the years. Certainly when I was a much younger stage manager, I believed that I had to mollycoddle them. That's what I believe.
There's a balance, isn't there? And so much of what you were just saying, Bruce, I absolutely agree with and echo. And I think the majority will take that autonomy in whatever their role, and not just the acting side of the company, but the wider company as well, of the production team, of other creatives. And then there's those who maybe aren't so self-sufficient. And for me, certainly a good stage manager is one that can recognize when somebody is genuinely needing that support, whether it's emotional, whether it's practical, in order to facilitate that production. And then there are times when it's like you said, Bruce, actually you just need to get on with it right now, and that's whoever it's coming from, that certain set of behavior or requirement is not helping the overall production, isn't it? What in turn then doesn't work for you as a stage manager? What are those sort of weaker traits that you've seen in stage management that sends you slightly scared?
Not being able to read people is really kind of like is a key failing if that's something that happens, because the ability to be able to respond to people's individual needs as a person. And I'm not talking about doing stuff for them. I'm just talking about being able to know that through the way that somebody has come into a room that you need to give them a minute, or that actually that me sitting, staring into space is not me waiting for someone to come and talk to me, that I might be thinking about the day's rehearsal, or that I might be thinking about a moment in a show. Once you've decided how you want the rehearsal room set up as a group, then that's how it's set up, and that, you know, things being ready when we've agreed that they're going to be ready. You know, if I overrun in the schedule, then I'm told about it, but that also is that there is a want to understand why, and being able to manage that. I don't like to have to dictate to people how to do their jobs. I couldn't light a show, for example, so there is no point in employing a lighting designer if I could do it better, for example, or if I think misguidedly that I could do it better. Sound design, everything. There has to be a respect for every role, and the fact that that person is a specialist in their role. And when people take ownership of that, and that they get to know you, and that they're good at reading people, and that they begin to find that rhythm for a rehearsal room, because every rehearsal room has a unique rhythm. A great stage manager will feel that and know that, but also will look after their team and will make sure that things happen when they're supposed to happen. And sometimes at the end of a very long day of rehearsal, there's a reaction that isn't necessarily something that I'm proud of. So, but that being able to understand that it's not a personal thing is a huge bonus for a director.
It's quite often when I'm trying to explain maybe to a group of students why you get creative teams or production teams that will work together again. And this is not about how people have a sort of a code of behaviour in the rehearsal room. I think that coming together of people who have stage managed as a team before, or if a director likes a particular lighting designer, of course, some of it is about creative style and aesthetic, but often it's about understanding and recognising how somebody works. So if you can see, if there's a response, like you said, Bruce, that's not one you go, oh, that's not me, that's not how I behave, that's not how I'd like to be working. But it's come of a moment, and teams that work together more often can recognise and read those. So I feel on a new production, when there are more a creative team coming together for the first time, or a completely new stage management team that hasn't worked together, it's so much more difficult. And that first part of the rehearsal process is more about getting to know how everyone works, as opposed to let's make a show.
Yeah, massively. And when you're in the room, be in the room. It's the same when rehearsal notes are being written as well. The ability to be able to gauge what rehearsal notes to put in, and to wait and to ask questions at the end of the day rather than send something out that's incorrect. Knowing when to speak. That's a really good note that was one of the notes that I was given as an assistant director, is know when to speak and when to wait. Not necessarily when to shut up, but when to wait to say that thing. Because chances are is that thing will probably be in the director's head that's of things to solve, and you pointing it out won't necessarily be a helpful thing. It all becomes about that kind of facilitation. And it seems like quite a trite thing to bring up, but that people being on their phones and stuff like that in a room is incredibly distracting, even if they're taking notes and on laptops and stuff. Is that, I mean, a lot of the time is that the stage manager will be out of the room, or the company stage manager will be out of the room and being on computers and stuff like that. It's you know, it's everyday life. But there's something that happens when we're on a screen that tells the actor that they're boring, and it makes it very difficult to maintain focus in the room when that's happening. Some people don't mind it, but a lot of people do, and a lot of people just don't say that they mind it. So I think that it's a little thing, but it carries enormous weight, I think, over the course of a 4 or 6 week rehearsal period.
I don't think it is a little thing. I completely agree with you. I have real concerns, and I understand now that for working style and efficiency, that DSMs will use a laptop on the production desk. But I've had conversations about where you place that laptop, because it's an immediate physical barrier. And the moment that's in between the DSM and the cast, then is the DSM following the book to prompt? So I have a real issue with that. And I think it's about reading the room. going back to your point.
It comes back to presence though again, doesn't it? You know, I would never want to DSM without having my laptop with me in the room, because it saves so much time later on in the day. You know, there was always that acceptance before that stage management would work over their hours in order to get that paperwork out, and the technology allows me to not do that. But I have practiced to be a very quiet typer, because some people type like, well, you know, it's like they're bashing the keyboard. And also, I wouldn't type in a scene. I'd only type, you know, when you were giving a note or there was a tea break or something else was happening. But it's about being present. You know, you need to be engaged in what's happening in the rehearsal room. And if that doesn't work for you, if you're not enjoying that, then I suggest that you're possibly in the wrong profession.
There's something, and this is a personal thing. This isn't necessarily a thing that, you know, that anybody's going to get taught in a stage management course or anything. But there's something that happens when you write down a note. So writing is thinking. So you write, as you handwrite it, you're thinking about it, and then you type it up afterwards. And as much as it's a labor-intensive thing, doing what's best and doing what's easiest are very rarely the same thing. It also comes back to empathy, because you've got to think about it from the other person's point of view. If you're a lighting designer who's currently working on a different show and you're getting a report through about this and you're expected to respond to it, then that information better be accurate. And also, it's not all about you as the director. I can't believe I've just said that. It's slightly becoming a conversation about how directors should behave. But everything's important. You know, you have to treat everything as if it's important, and you have to be respectful of other people's processes. It's not all about you. And it is about getting the best out of people in all ways, shapes and forms. And sometimes we have good days and sometimes we have bad days, but we better have predominantly good days or the show isn't going to work.
But I think the reason it's turning into that conversation, Bruce, is because actually stage managers don't get to have this conversation with directors. You know, the hierarchy is set up that director is king, the captain of the ship.
See it more like you're a football manager. If you win, then the team all gets the credit. If you lose, you get sacked. There is enormous pressure across the board on producers and directors and stuff like that. And I think that that's something that that doesn't necessarily get considered. And that this might be slightly controversial, so I'll just throw that out there, is that stage managers tend to go from job to job. The good ones tend to go from job to job. And whereas as a director, when the show is opened, if it's a success, then they get to do more. If it's a failure, you're going to struggle.
What I loved hearing you say earlier, and what you don't see happen all of the time, is when you talked about the rehearsal room and you talked about we'll decide how we set up the rehearsal room. And it wasn't that I decide how we're going to set up the rehearsal room. So have you ever been in a position in a process where you felt like you had to use hierarchy, or on the opposite side of that, quash it in order that it wasn't detrimental to the show?
Yes, to both.
Expand.
Well, I've been in situations whereby actors have been bullied. By stage managers, and I've been in situations whereby the stage managers are completely ineffectual as well, to the point whereby that people have had to be let go from projects, from quite major projects actually. And that's the thing is that if you don't have that spine there that of trust, and ultimately that's what it comes down to, because it's like there's a motivational speaker called Simon Sinek who talks about this, and that he talks about how in the Marine Corps is that in the United States is that they're not taught to fight for their country or the flag. They're taught to fight for the person on the left and the person on the right. And if you look after those two people, then you'll get through. So if everybody just looks after the person on the left and the person on your right, then when we come out the other end of the COVID-19 situation, is that we're going to have to, work really hard to win audiences back to come into live performances. And it's totally doable, because I think that as human beings, we are pack animals. This is that we are community animals. We like to be together. We like to socialize. We like to be in spaces, experiencing things together. And that's why theatre has been around for more than 3,000 years and is one of the oldest art forms that there is. It begs, borrows and steals from all the greatest of art forms, and that's what makes it so brilliant. So we're there to serve the audience. And if that audience can't turn up on a Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Thursday night, and expect a show that's the same standard as at the weekend or on press night, then we're not doing our jobs.
The times I've been to see a show as an audience member and just thought, oh, come on, I know it's a Wednesday and it's wet and horrible or whatever, but it needs to be the same show every day. Absolutely. But also I think that level of trust that you talked about, handing it over to the stage manager. Yeah, absolutely. That's my job. And I think part of that is understanding in exactly the same way that performers have to understand that every day is different. I know myself as a show caller, you can call it immaculately, or what you feel is immaculately one day. And then the next day, you're slightly off by a beat or whatever. And it's learning that that's part of the journey of this live medium. If you wanted to work in film, then go work in film. It's a different thing, but part of the liveness of theatre is there will be different modifications each day, and I think that's quite tough sometimes to learn, that you're going to do it great one day and then there's going to be a day where it's not quite so great, or it's different, or you find something new in it, or whatever it is. I think that's an incredibly important point for young actors and young stage managers in training.
And certainly for me, that's why we do it. That's why we do theatre. And that might be about my performance on a given show, whether I'm having a bad day or a good day, about whether I've misset a prop or miscalled a cue or I've called it beautifully. That's about individual actors. Going back to what you were saying earlier, Bruce, what have they got on? Everybody's got something else going on. It's not always about just what's happening on that stage or in that rehearsal room. And also, when we get to performance, the exciting part for me in stage management is that when it's live, when we have an audience, that we respond to that audience. So the actors respond to the audience. And similarly, I think we as stage managers, as operators, as the rest of the production team respond to whether it got a laugh or a deathly silence, or you can tell if the audience hasn't got a clue what's going on or is with you every step of the way. Something I want to ask both of you, as a director and a stage manager, how do you both create or help aid that environment of respect from the beginning?
That you listen to people when they have something to say. I think that's a really important thing. Is letting people finish their sentence, finish their point, is a really important thing, and take seriously, even if you disagree. There's been many times where a stage manager or a production manager or someone where I've got a very fixed idea of how I want things to be done, and then they'll present me with the counter argument to that or several alternatives, and then you'll sit and you'll think actually I'm going to change my opinion about that.
When I get to work with a new team, new people, there's two things that I think are key. First, I don't know everything, and I might be the senior member of the stage management team, but I certainly don't know everything. And if I couldn't learn anything every day, then I might as well give up now. So I kind of always say to a young ASM, just because I've been doing it longer doesn't mean that I know all the answers, and if you've got a better solution than I've got, then come tell me. And I think communication is key. There's no stupid questions. There's no, if you've got an idea or something, then come and talk to me about it. Maybe not in the middle of a production meeting, that's about reading the room and knowing when to be quiet, one of my particular favourites. But don't ever think I'm better than you, because I'm not. And I think that comes back to Jacqui's thing about, I can sweep the stage, I can mop the stage, I can do all of those things. I'm not so grand that I can't do those things. That's for me is the most important thing, Jacqui, is that none of us are any better than one another. We've just all got different jobs and different responsibilities. And I include the cast in that. And whether you're a Hollywood star or not doesn't make any difference. Respect at the end of the day for what we're all doing is the most important part of the story as far as I'm concerned.
That's just good life skills, isn't it?
Absolutely. Oh, fantastic. Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Stand By Please. Join us next time when we'll be discussing COVID-19 and the theatre industry's reaction. Until then, Jacqui and Antonia, off cams.